Good evening, everyone. My name's Rick Barrett, and I'm a retired captain with the Oakville Fire Department. I would like to thank the Historical Society for inviting me for Speakers Night, and also to everyone who came out this evening. Tonight certainly won't be a complete look at all the fires or incidents over the years, but on behalf of myself and all the retirees, I hope you enjoy some of the history of our fire department here in Oakville. I would like to mention some of the pictures I'm using are mine, but many came from the fire department book Reflections of a Proud Heritage by Glenn Barwell, Rob Kirkpatrick, Cam Bender, John Percy, and Lynn Norton, and the entire committee who put the book together, and Fire Chief Paul Boisenall, who's kindly allowed me to use photos and information from the book, and many of those originally came from the Historical Society, so thank you to them as well, and everyone for allowing me to be able to share this with you. Also to Captain Gilmore of the Charlotte, North Carolina Fire Department for permission to use a short video clip. If someone in Oakville has a fire today, or an accident, or requires assistance, you can expect one truck or several trucks, as well as a platoon chief, deputy chief. They'll all be responding depending on the severity of the call. If we turn back the clock a little bit, we realize how different life was in the times of an emergency. Early residents would clear the land, build their house, their cabin, but one thing everyone had in common was how much they relied on fire as an everyday necessity. They needed the large open fireplace for cooking 3 meals a day, for heating water, for cleaning, bathing, so much more. Everything around them was wood, the furnishings, the floors, the walls. When using open flames, candles, and lanterns so much, the odds were against them, and the chance of a fire happening was pretty high, and it did happen probably more than we know. And when it did happen, everyone depended on neighbors, family, or anyone close by to help. A bucket brigade would be formed to the closest water supply, pond, river, or well, but many times these fires would be unstoppable, and they would lose everything. In 1854, Council for the Township of Trafalgar purchased a hand-pump fire engine, and it was named the Little Cataract, which they stored in one end of the schoolhouse on Navy Street, just north of Lakeshore. And in 1854, there was a foundry called Doty and Hibbard Foundry that manufactured axles and carriage springs, and they were located on the west bank of the creek, just north of the Lakeshore Bridge. Now, fire broke out and spread quickly, and it could not be contained. This was a huge loss at the time of $10,000, and the town by this time was almost reaching 2,000 residents. The hand-pump fire engine they purchased was a small positive displacement pump, and they were good, but they were limited. Dragging this type of equipment and hose reels, etc., would have been exhausting for the volunteers before ever reaching the fire. But with an adequate supply of water and enough people pumping, they could shoot water about 150 to 200 feet, or approximately 60 meters. I have a short clip of an 1866 hand fire pump demonstration in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I think you'll find it interesting to see the kind of work that it took to operate this equipment. First of all, pulling the pump to the fire through mud, snow, then getting it set up and finding a water source. It took several people and a lot of exertion to provide a steady stream and to keep it going. In July 1910, James Lister resigned as chief, and Alf Hilmer would be appointed fire chief for the next 34 years. After he took over his father's livery stable on Church Street, it was the horses that would sometimes pull the hose reels. November 1913, the main fire station located in the town hall had a fire, which started on the second floor. Once again, low water pressure had an effect on the outcome, and the results? 3 stone walls were left standing. By this time, telephones were being used to transfer fire calls to Chief Hilmer's residence. Other firefighters, hearing the bell or whistle being used at the time, would respond to the nearest hose reel station and pull the equipment to the area indicated. By 1917, Chief Hilmer had converted his horse-drawn bus fleet to gas-powered vehicles, which could now pull the fire equipment, and the population had grown now to about 3,000 residents. In 1919, the town purchased a Model T Chem fire truck, shown here in Downsview, and it was from the war surplus, costing the town about $825, and along with 1,000 feet of hose for another $550. Jump ahead to the spring of 1921, and the new two-bay fire station was completed on Church Street, right across from the old Legion. And the official opening was June 29, 1921. This station would remain active for the next 46 years. Out in Bronte in 1923, they had the Triller Hotel fire and caused the people of Bronte to form the Bronte Fire Department May 1st, 1925. That was taken over by the Trafalgar Department later in 1940. This was the small station across from Walton United Church. One of the main industries in Oakville was the basket factory, which had had a couple fires, one at the old factory on Trafalgar and McDonald, and the newer one just south of the tracks on Trafalgar Road, but it was rebuilt and remained open until 1984. The volunteer firefighters would have had their hands full with this type of fire. It would have burned fast and would have been very hot. The basket factory played a huge role in this town's history. Their whistle was so loud they used it at one point for the town's official fire alarm to alert the volunteers to fire calls. The sound of a whistle like that one brings back a lot of memories for the people here in Oakville, and not just that there was a fire somewhere, just the memories of where you were at that point in your life. After the fire at the basket factory, citizens and business owners petitioned council for another fire truck, a combination chemical and hose truck, which they'd raised $900 towards, and the purchase price of $2,000, council agreed to pay the rest of this for the LaFrance fire truck seen here with Fred Shaw on the left and Art Tuck driving. The next truck purchased would be Oakville's first pumper, at a cost of $7,000. It would pump 480 gallons a minute, approximately 1,800 liters per minute, and would work very well with the new hydrant system. Carried 1,000 feet or 300 meters of hose, the new pumper arrived in early 1929 and would be at the Church Street station. You can see in the last picture Oakville and Port Credit doing a training session. They're seen drafting water from the river with the hard suction hose. Council sought ways to get the alarms turned in sooner, and the Northern Electric Company gave a presentation to Council in 1924 about installing 12 pull boxes placed throughout the town for alerting the department at a cost of $5,000, and they were installed in 1924. The call would go directly to the pump house, the chief's home, the police station, and instructions to the public on how to operate the pull boxes were given out. The system was upgraded around 1950. In 1926, Oakville started billing residents for unnecessary fires to try and prevent residents from starting grass fires and other nuisance fires which would get out of hand. In 1929, Oakville imposed a $10 charge for the department to respond outside the town limits. They would only respond to those who had paid their annual fee, and this remained in effect until 1939. Unfortunately, the small notice in the paper would not be seen by everyone. In some cases, a fire started, but no one was responding. Let's jump ahead to October 30, 1944, and the passing of Chief Hilmer. And on November 20, Council appointed Deputy Chief Shaw to succeed Chief Hilmer, and William Whitaker became Deputy Chief. Town Council approved the purchase of a new LaFrance pumper, and it arrived April 1, 1948. This was a state-of-the-art fire truck. 12-cylinder engine, had a 125-gallon water tank, could pump 625 gallons per minute or approximately 2,300 liters per minute, would carry about 1,200 feet of 2.5-inch hose and 500 feet of 1.5-inch hose, and it was approved for the staggering cost of $18,000. This truck is sitting in the fire department's heritage room, and unfortunately it blew the engine at the Wren's feed mill fire in 1980. The Oakville Professional Firefighters got together with a committee, John DeHooge, Mike Hoffman, John Cheeseman, and many others, and they would oversee the restoration of this truck, with the exception it would never pump again. But it's used for public events, Santa parades, and there's no power steering, no power brakes, no roof, but a great fire truck. Soon after, in August 1948, they used the new truck and tried unsuccessfully to stop the fire at the Kendall Leather Company. The building stood at the southwest corner of Navy and Lakeshore. Even operating multiple large hose streams, they couldn't save it, but they did manage to keep it from spreading. This is a picture of Trafalgar number 1 and 2 together at the old Eaton's Estate garage, which was then the Lawson Estate, and they would store the truck there. The picture showing the Bronte firefighters around 1955, Chief Grant Bray and Deputy Chief Jack Osborne, who were in charge. The Whitaker and Son garage on Trafalgar Road had a fire October of 1950. This was actually one of the first uses of self-contained breathing apparatus in Oakville, and the Oakville police actually had to rush to Toronto Fire Department and come back with spare air cylinders for the few units that we had. In 1951, the station on Chartwell was built, just north of the tracks. In 1955, Oakville responded to 108 calls for the first time, and in November 1957, the Lakeshore Radio Company suffered a $100,000 fire. In March of 1958, Deputy Chief Whitaker passed, and Doug Wilson became the new Deputy Chief. Not long after, Doug Wilson would become Chief. In 1959 saw the Trafalgar building fire on Lakeshore Road, and several trucks responded from Trafalgar Township. Even the BA refinery in Clarkson sent a pumper. This fire exceeded $600,000. Also in 1959, a new station was built at 1298 Rebecca Street, and it was the Trafalgar Township Station Number 1. Jumping ahead to 1962, we see the amalgamation of Oakville Fire and Trafalgar Township. The town amalgamated in 1962, creating a newly expanded Oakville, with a combined population now of 40,000. The department would see approximately 400 calls that year. Don Charrington would be promoted to captain in charge of maintenance and training, and Wes Miller promoted to lieutenant and would be the chief fire prevention officer. In July of 1962, council approved the hiring of the original 6 full-time firefighters: Gord Reed, Al Charrington, Doug Bowen, Cliff Goodale, Al Redshaw, and Bob McKay. In December of 1962, Oakville took delivery of a new Ford 85-foot aerial ladder. I used this truck many times, and of course, everything was manually operated, not like today's trucks. The outrigger jacks had pins to stop the truck from tipping when the turntable was rotated to the side, and they had to be manually screwed down. The 3-inch hose to feed the nozzle was fastened to the ladder, so when the turntable was rotated, someone would have to grab that and pull it around manually. Today, the nozzle has permanent piping and hydraulic stabilizers. In the early days of the department, there sometimes would be one firefighter working alone at the station. Some cases they would lock up at 5 p.m. and the volunteers would be on call, and in 1964, more full-time firefighters were hired. And they hired again in 1966, which enabled coverage of 2 men per station on a 24-hour basis. Over the years in Oakville, different bells and steam whistles were used to alert the volunteers. The bells at St. Jude, Marlant Leather Company, the Basket Factory, Monsanto Plant. Off-duty calls for myself for a general alarm when I started, and for several years, where all the firefighters were needed, they would pick up the phone at dispatch, and the call would ring steady in all the firefighters' homes in Oakville at the same time. They would repeat the address several times, and if you were on the phone at the time, it would actually cut you off. The Monsanto Plant steam whistle that was used to call out the volunteers is in the Heritage Room at Central Station. It was donated by Mr. Alan Simpson, which was a gift from his son-in-law, Ed Black, who was a supervisor at the Monsanto plant. August 11, 1967, the old Church Street station closed, and the new Central Station at 125 Randall Street was opened. The complement of full-time firefighters was now around 38. The town still relied on the help of approximately 80 volunteer firefighters who would receive $5 per fire and $2 per hour after the first hour. In 1969, they saw the retirement of Oakville's first full-time dispatcher, Bill Myers, who had been a captain with the volunteers as well. And in 1970, saw the department handle approximately 678 calls for help. May of 1971 saw the Midway lumber fire on Bronte Road, which was an all-night call using all personnel and volunteers, and by morning they were still cleaning up only to get a call on Kerr Street for the Dominion Furniture Store, which had suffered from fires in 1957 and again in 1959. About 3 months after Wes Miller was promoted to chief in 1976, and about 6 days after I was hired, Oakville firefighters responded to a call of a house fire on Westminster Drive. 3 young boys were trapped in this home. Station 1, Station 3 arrived to find heavy fire in the family room. As crews knocked down the fire and others were doing a search for the boys, they found them, not breathing, and resuscitation was started, and the paramedics worked alongside as they loaded the boys and rushed to OTMH. They were immediately recommended to be taken to Sick Kids in Toronto. Coordinated efforts from the OPP, 3 ambulance crews, Toronto police, radio stations, they blocked the intersections, and they got the boys to Sick Kids in 26 minutes in the early morning rush hour. The boys all did recover, and they met with the 8 firefighters who rescued them. April 25, 1978. At approximately 1:30 p.m., I was off duty in the area of Old Number 2 station. I heard the sirens and saw the trucks responding to Industry Street, just off Chartwell. As I pulled up near the station, another off-duty firefighter was yelling it's a general alarm. This was the Oakville Storage and Forwarders Warehouse Complex, which was about 7 buildings, some up to 400 feet in length, where they stored many different chemicals, pesticides, etc. Aerosol cans were rocketing through the air like small missiles, and 45-gallon drums were exploding straight up hundreds of feet in the air. At one point I was on the roof of Pioneer Pool, trying to stop it from igniting, and the large concern of pool chlorine storage in that building. Large sheets of tin siding from the warehouse were coming through the smoke like frisbees. You could hear them, but you just couldn't see them for the smoke. This was approximately a $7 million fire, and we were on scene for several days. Old Pump 8 pumped for more than 30 hours straight at this call, and I believe the figure was approximately 6 million gallons of water that was pumped. November 10, 1979, the switchboard at the Oakville Fire Department was overwhelmed with calls about explosions and fireballs in the northeast of Oakville. It was in fact quite a way into Mississauga near Dundas and Mavis Road, and it was the beginning of the Mississauga train derailment. They had leaking chlorine tankers surrounded by exploding and burning propane tankers, and this prompted officials to begin evacuation in both Mississauga and Oakville. I remember doing some of the evacuations as nearly 3,000 residents were asked to leave their homes, as well as Oakville Trafalgar Memorial Hospital was evacuated. When I worked at this station prior to having a training center, we would light up a pan of gas and diesel and do our extinguisher training at the back of the station. The Woodside Library was across the street from the station, and we never received a complaint that I was made aware of about the smoke, and I'm not sure why, as you can see in this video clip. Wren's Feed Mill on Trafalgar Road at Burnhamthorpe had a major fire on February 12, 1980. The fire burned quickly. This is the fire where Old Pump 8 blew the engine after 32 years of service. And in January of 1981, the BP refinery had an explosion and fire that caused from a crack in the pipeline at the base of the catalytic reformer. BP firefighters and Oakville Fire managed to bring it under control after several hours, and after picking up equipment and much hose, the next call came in. The next call was for Bill Orr's Paint and Wallpaper Store. In the early hours of the morning, and by the way, I think the coldest night of the year, Bill Orr's Paint Store at Lakeshore and George was reported on fire. Crews from Central Station arrived quickly and made sure all the apartments upstairs were evacuated. And actually a tenant who had woke up choking on smoke also was banging on doors to wake the tenants. 2 of the crew entering were caught in an explosion when a window air conditioner came crashing down. Both firefighters went to the hospital and were released later. Crews battled this for about 5 hours in the bitter cold, and damage estimate was around $500,000. 1984, an accident on the QEW. You can see this is not somewhere that you would want to be. April of 1985 saw a large tank truck roll on its side. It was loaded with 11,000 gallons or 41,000 liters of gasoline. It was now running down Spears Road like a river. Unfortunately, it was running into the nearby creek, headed to the lake. But with the efforts of the town crew and also the help from the refinery, they were able to contain it downstream. We were busy spreading foam, trying to prevent ignition and trying to contain it and stop it from entering the storm drains on Spears. We were evacuating people who were just being inquisitive. Many people were involved that night, including volunteer firefighter Ken Pollock, longtime volunteer, also who worked at the refinery, had extensive knowledge of working with flammable liquids. And we were happy to have all of the assistance from the gentleman from the refinery. The summer of 1988 saw Oakville Ice Center destroyed by fire. The building couldn't be saved, and it was demolished. Chief Miller retired in December of 1990, and he was replaced when they hired Wayne Gould from Mississauga. December 31st, 1991, the crew arrived at a residence and delivered a baby, which I believe was the first at that time. And in 1992, Oakville became only the second department in Ontario to equip the trucks with external defibrillators. This was through a donation from the Lions Club of Oakville, and the first recorded save was January 1995. May of 1985 saw the building under construction at the corner of Kerr and Lakeshore destroyed by fire. This house fire in 1992 saw 4 firefighters injured in a basement fire. This was very hard to access this fire as it was hidden behind a block wall in the basement with a small crawl-through opening, and just caused a great amount of work trying to locate it. It was very hot, very smoky, and as the first-in crews repeatedly searched around and around for the seat of this fire, the lifeline of their hose, which you normally can follow out in a bad situation, were quite tangled. When I arrived with my crew, we heard the sounds of alarms and bells ringing, meaning most were nearly out of air. Myself and crew were able to get to the basement and get these fellas out, and we found another fellow on the stairs, got him out. It was just all the circumstance that came together that day to make a bad situation, but luckily everyone was okay. September 1993 saw these 4 firefighters given a life-saving award for a tunnel rescue under Bronte Creek. The man was a worker digging a 200-foot tunnel 6 feet wide and about 100 feet down. An electrical fire started and blocked his escape. The crew were able to get him out and get him to safety and received a well-deserved award. 1994 saw the first female firefighter hired in Oakville. There are many more in the department doing a great job, and Joanne is now in her 28th year and is an assistant platoon chief. River Oaks Plaza Fire of 1996. August 19, 1996, I was captain at Station 4, which is at Upper Middle Road and 6th Line, when a call came in for a dumpster bin fire at the plaza, which is about 2 minutes up the road. It was quickly changed to a structure fire. As we pulled out of the station, we could see the smoke, and this fire had a considerable head start, spreading to the common attic space and working its way through the plaza. While the crews were cutting it off at the corner of the plaza, my other concern was the large medical building immediately behind the plaza, only a few feet away. We did manage to stop it at the corner where the plaza turned toward the bank. In January 2001, Chief Chris Powers took over the department, and on June 28, 2001, the Oakville Training Campus was opened. The project was started by the former Chief Wayne Gould, and it's located on the South Service Road between 4th Line and 3rd Line. This is a state-of-the-art facility, a burn tower with high-angle rescue, rail cars, ponds for drafting, propane simulator, vehicle extrication, confined space training. It lets the firefighters train in real live type situations. All of the training at the campus that the firefighters do teaches them to trust their equipment, whether it's ladders, air packs, ropes, and I think this next picture says it all about trusting your equipment. In 2003, the fire department dispatch moved from Central Station in Oakville to the Burlington Fire Department. And you can see in the picture the large screen TV giving the dispatchers live camera feeds of the QEW, and there's 2 complete workstations for the 2 working dispatchers. In 2003, the department formed the Public Education Department for the Oakville Fire Department, and I applied and spent my last year getting this up and running. And the Pub Ed officer works alongside the Fire Prevention Division, who are making sure that our schools and the businesses stay safe, doing the necessary inspections to keep the buildings of Oakville up to the required standards. This includes the hospitals, hotels, retirement homes, and through the years, all the staff that have worked in both the fire prevention and training divisions have always done a great job for the crews and the residents here in Oakville. Midnight Madness, which we have done several different years, was always a great time with the people that we met. They had vehicle extrication demonstrations, pictures with Old Pump 8, and talking fire safety with all who would listen. You can see in this picture the tanker truck has rolled over on the curve coming onto the QEW as the firefighters are diking the area, trying to stop the runoff. You can also see in the picture the helicopter landing and taking the driver to the hospital in Toronto. In June of 2018, I was visiting Central Station, had my camera, and they received a call of a boat fire at the dock just below Central Station. It took them approximately 1 minute to get there, but as you can see, the boat fire was well involved on their arrival. Here's a quick look at Pumper 281, one of the newer vehicles at Station 8. It pumps about 1,251 imperial gallons per minute, or 5,600 liters roughly per minute, and it holds 5,500 liters of water. I would like to mention a little bit about the work the firefighters have done over the years for many charities in Oakville and beyond. Starting way back, and some have been carried on now by the younger crews, I'm proud to say. But over the years, we've worked with Ian Anderson House. We purchased some of the early dog guides for the Lions Foundation, the muscular dystrophy campaigns, helping the food banks and donations to the Salvation Army. And today, some of these that are being helped would be the Food for Kids Halton, muscular dystrophy again. This year celebrates 30 years for the annual toy drive. Dog guides, and I apologize if I'm missing some. The recruit class of 1993 went to Iowa after severe flooding there and helped the residents. And the recruit class of 1994 went to Florida to help after Hurricane Andrew and rebuild homes. And in 1998, like I mentioned, the ice storm, Oakville sent crews there to help out. At Christmas time, it's been just over 30 years now, Santa still gets me to help him out as firefighters make the rounds at Oakville Trafalgar Memorial Hospital for the boys and girls stuck in the hospital over Christmas, with lots of toys and gift cards, and then off to see the seniors in the hospital. I'm proud the younger new firefighters continuing the work that the retirees started so long ago, staying on after long 24-hour shifts or coming back in to help. As I wrap up this evening, I would like to mention getting through a fire and getting out of your own home is nothing like portrayed on TV. It's very disorienting with the smoke and the heat, and you have very little time. Make sure your entire family has a plan and practices. Please, everyone check your smoke and carbon monoxide alarm, and if anyone needs help or information, I know the Fire Prevention Division would be happy to help. And I'm so glad I got to spend my career here in Oakville. Thank you all.